Charlotte looks like the easy button. Jobs popping up in every direction, prices that haven't totally lost their mind yet, weather that doesn't ruin your week, period. And yeah, that part's real. Here's what doesn't show up on Google. Charlotte doesn't reward people who just move here. It rewards people who understand how it actually works. Because this city will absolutely treat you well, or quietly humble you, based on one decision that most people rush past. That's how you end up loving your house, then realize Charlotte plays a little differently the first time I-77 locks up at 5:30 on a random Tuesday. If you've ever looked at Charlotte and thought, this feels like a cheat code, you're right. You just have to know what you're unlocking. I've seen people land here and hit their stride fast. And I've seen people buy a great house in a great area and still feel off every Monday morning. Same city, totally different experience. That gap isn't luck, it's intention. So the real question is, which version of Charlotte are you about to move into? Small reset, because this matters. I learned this by watching real people move here, not by reading stats. Someone shows up excited, great job, great house, everything looks perfect on paper. They're grabbing coffee in South End on a Saturday, talking about how smooth the move felt. 6 months later, they're frustrated, wondering why Charlotte feels harder than it should. Meanwhile, someone else with the same budget and timeline is cruising. Same city, totally different experience. That's when the light bulb hit. Charlotte isn't complicated, but it is specific. It rewards people who line their life up with how the city actually moves, not how they assume it moves. Get that right and life here feels smooth, comfortable, and almost easy. Miss it and everything feels like extra effort for no clear reason. And that's why before we talk prices, neighborhoods, or numbers, we have to talk about the one thing that decides whether Charlotte feels like home or just an address. Because here, lifestyle fit matters more than the house. People move to Charlotte and shop it like a checklist. Square footage, school ratings, new construction smell, granite everywhere, and they win the house, but lose the lifestyle. Charlotte isn't one city. It's a collection of completely different lives stacked on top of each other. I had a client who did everything right. Mid-30s, 2 kids, both parents working, beautiful place, quiet street, big backyard. On paper, it was a home run, but daily life felt heavy. Early mornings that started rushed, long drives that never showed up in the budget, every errand turned into a production. In a city where roughly 75% of people drive alone every day, distance quietly becomes part of your personality. They liked their house, but their routine drained them. Meanwhile, another client bought smaller, closer in, less flashy. Early 40s, no kids yet, hybrid schedule. Their days actually flowed. Coffee they could walk to, a commute that didn't steal their mood before noon, weeknights that felt usable again, not something to recover from. Living near South End instead of across the I-485 loop completely changed how their days felt. Same budget, totally different energy. That's the part nobody puts in the listing description. Charlotte doesn't reward square footage, it rewards alignment. This city runs on rhythm. When you realize the region adds well over 150 new people every single day, it makes sense why routine friction shows up fast if you're not intentional. Live where your life actually happens and things feel easier. You miss that, and even a perfect house starts to feel heavy. You don't live in your house. You live in your routine. The house just hosts it. And this is where people get caught off guard. They realize it after they move in. Too far from work, too far from friends, too far from the version of life they thought they were buying. Living closer to corridors like I-77 versus 5 minutes off your daily stop feels minor on paper, but massive by month 3. Charlotte didn't change. Their assumptions did. If you're relocating and this is clicking, stop scrolling listings and get real clarity. We are the local Charlotte real estate team of choice, and this is exactly what we help people figure out before they make an expensive mistake. Call us, text us, email us. All of our info is in the description. We'll help you map the lifestyle first so the house actually fits. Charlotte only makes sense once you stop treating it like a single place. It's not one vibe, one pace, one rhythm. It's multiple lifestyles running in parallel, and your experience changes fast depending on which lane you're actually living in. More than 70% of residents live outside the Uptown core, which means most people aren't experiencing the same Charlotte day to day, even if they think they are. Take this same Saturday morning. In South End, it's dogs everywhere, patios filling up early, people walking with coffee like they've got nowhere urgent to be. Slide that same morning over to Plaza Midwood, and it's a little grittier, a little looser. Old houses, local spots, people lingering longer. Roll it farther down to Ballantine, and the tone flips completely. Quiet, planned, clean. Groceries, kids' activities, maybe a workout, then back home. Same city, completely different energy. Neither one wins. They're built for different people. Now, let the sun go down, South End stays loud and alive. Music spilling out, traffic still moving, sidewalks buzzing. Meanwhile, places like Matthews or Huntersville shut it down early. Streets calm, porch lights on. You're not missing out. You're just living a different version of Charlotte. That day versus night shift matters more than people expect, because it quietly decides whether where you live gives you energy or drains it. This is why people misread the city. They hear Charlotte and picture one thing, when what they're actually choosing is a lifestyle ecosystem. Walkable and social, structured and family-driven, quiet with room to breathe. The average one-way commute here sits in the mid-20-minute range. But how that time feels depends entirely on where you start and end your day. The miss isn't the neighborhood. The miss is picking a daily rhythm that doesn't match how you actually live. Quick gut check. Which version sounds like you right now? Drop it in the comments. Is it walkable and social, structured and family first, or quiet with room to breathe? I read every comment. Here's the one reality that people don't plan for. Nearly half of Charlotte households include kids, which means routines, schedules, and timing shape the city just as much as restaurants and rooftops. You can love Charlotte and still hate your day-to-day if that lifestyle fit is off. That's why two people can move here at the same time with similar budgets and walk away with opposite opinions 6 months later. They didn't land in different cities. They landed in different Charlotte. Once that clicks, another layer starts to matter. Because after lifestyle and location line up, real life shows up. Not the list price on a house, but what living here actually costs once the routines kick in. And that's where the conversation shifts. A lot of people moving here aren't just changing cities. They're changing eras. Charlotte used to let you land soft, show up, feel it out, and adjust later. That version aged out. In 2026, this city runs hotter and tighter, and the people coming in reflect that shift. Net migration alone added roughly 57,000 people in a single year, which works out to about 150 new residents every day. That's not vibe growth, that's pressure. You see it in how fast things lock up. Nearly 29,000 housing units were delivered in 1 year, yet rentals still absorbed quickly and competition didn't ease the way that people expected. Translation, supply grew, but the demand kept pace, especially around University City, where job-driven relocations keep the leasing cycle short, and along the South Boulevard corridor, where new multifamily doesn't sit, it filled. The people arriving now aren't wandering. They're mid-career, often remote, often dual income. They're relocating with spreadsheets, timelines, and decision windows that don't wait around. That changes the tempo. You feel it in how early people commit, how fast neighborhoods stabilize, how little patience there is for indecision. Charlotte didn't turn cutthroat, it turned intentional. And that's the upside nobody frames correctly. This shift raised the floor. Stronger restaurants survive, retail sticks, neighborhoods like Huntersville and Fort Mill mature faster because demand shows up ready, not tentative. Infrastructure gets tested, no question. But opportunity stacks too, because momentum attracts momentum. That's why reactions to Charlotte are all over the map. now. Someone expecting the old "we'll figure it out later" version feels boxed out. Someone matching the city's current pace usually feels lift instead. Same place, opposite experience. Charlotte didn't lose its soul. It outgrew its trial phase. And cities in that stage reward clarity about work, about routine, about what actually matters once Monday hits. Which brings us to the part nobody can dodge anymore. Not whether you can afford Charlotte, but how this new version shows up in your monthly life once the routines start running. That's when the math stops being theoretical. People don't get Charlotte wrong because they choose the wrong area. They get it wrong because they try to live here like it's their old city. A lot of buyers arrive still running a familiar playbook. They assume proximity works the same. They assume traffic scales the same. They assume newer automatically means easier. Charlotte doesn't play by those rules. Over 75% of workers here drive alone, and instead of one dominant core, the city runs across multiple job hubs that pull people in different directions every single day. This place is spread out on purpose. Banking, healthcare, logistics, corporate campuses, they're scattered. Social life isn't stacked neatly either. It lives in pockets. When someone applies an old city mindset to that setup, friction shows up fast, not dramatic, just constant. Commutes that look reasonable on Google Maps, but feel heavier at 7:45 a.m. Errands that stack instead of flow. Evenings that feel shorter than they should, even when the day technically wasn't that long. The average one-way commute sits around 25 minutes. But in Charlotte, timing and corridor matter more than raw distance. You feel it when you're idling through the third light cycle on Providence Road, turn signal clicking, morning radio looping, watching the clock slide while a 10-mile drive quietly eats 40 minutes. Or when a quick run from Ballantyne toward Uptown collides with peak traffic and compresses your entire schedule. Or when grabbing coffee near South End works on foot, but doing the same thing from Huntersville means planning around school drop-off, traffic windows, and parking before the caffeine even hits. The mistake is assuming Charlotte behaves like a centralized city when it behaves more like a network. Nodes, corridors, lifestyle pockets stitched together by timing and movement. Planning data backs this up. Charlotte consistently ranks among most car-dependent large metros, which means small location decisions compound fast. Ignore that structure, and people start blaming the house, the city, or themselves, when really it was the lens they brought with them. Charlotte works beautifully when you respect how it moves. When you stop asking, is this a good deal, and start asking, does this place make my day feel easier or harder? That shift saves people years of low-grade frustration and hundreds of hours a year in reclaimed time. And that's where the real surprises tend to show up. Charlotte still wins on sticker shock. That's real. The confusion starts when people think sticker price equals total cost. The monthly math here behaves differently than people expect. Housing might look manageable, but ownership costs stack faster than newcomers plan for. Property taxes jump depending on the county line you land on. Insurance is the quiet one. According to regional housing data tracked by UNC Charlotte, average homeowner insurance premiums in the Charlotte Metro have climbed roughly 20 to 30% in the last few years. And newer construction doesn't always mean cheaper coverage. Utilities surprise people too. Summers are longer and stickier than advertised. Local utility data shows summer power bills in the Charlotte area regularly spike 30 to 40% between spring and peak summer, especially in larger homes with open floor plans. You feel it in neighborhoods like Steel Creek or newer builds out towards Waxhaw, where square footage looks great until July hits. That number doesn't show up in your mortgage calculator, but it shows up every single month. HOAs deserve their own line item. Many communities sit in the $100 to $300 a month range, and some go higher once amenities and special assessments creep in. It doesn't feel like much at first. It feels different after a year writing that check for things you rarely use. Transportation costs live in the background until they don't. Charlotte households average 2 vehicles, An annual ownership cost per car often land north of $9,000 when you factor in payment, insurance, fuel, and maintenance. That reality hits differently depending on where you live. A place near Plaza Midwood might cost more up front, but trims ongoing expenses. A farther out move toward Huntersville can quietly stack costs month after month. That's before surprise repairs. That's before time value. Here's why these costs behave this way in Charlotte. Rapid population growth has outpaced infrastructure in key areas, which pushes more expense onto households through cars, private amenities, and higher operating costs instead of shared systems. The city's growth model rewards opportunity, but it shifts more monthly responsibility onto individual homeowners. This is where people get sideways. A house that felt affordable at purchase starts pulling more cash than expected every month. Meanwhile, a smaller place with fewer systems, shorter drives, and lower overhead quietly stabilizes. Same income, different stress level. Charlotte still offers value, especially compared to coastal markets. The win just isn't the lowest purchase price. The win is predictable monthly life. When costs stay boring, life feels lighter. Once people see the full cost picture clearly, one last question tends to surface. New construction doesn't sell a house. It sells certain. Everything feels decided for you. Floor plan picked, finishes chosen, timeline outlined, fewer unknowns, fewer variables. It feels clean and controlled, especially when you're relocating and already juggling 100 moving pieces. That sense of control is the real product, and it's working. Local MLS and relocation data consistently show that out-of-state buyers are significantly more likely to choose new construction or master plan communities than longtime locals. In some outer corridors, over half of inbound buyers start with new builds, especially in areas like Waxhaw, Huntersville, and Steel Creek, where scale and inventory are easier to deliver. What catches people off guard is how early the commitment happens. With new construction, you're locking in decisions before you've lived a single normal week in Charlotte, before you know how traffic actually feels, before you know where your energy goes during the day, before you know which parts of the city you naturally gravitate toward. You're buying confidence in advance. That works great when your assumptions are right. When they're off, the adjustment gets expensive. You can't renegotiate location. You can't undo timing. You can't try it for a year the same way you can with an existing home or a rental. New construction has momentum. Once you're in, that train keeps moving. Research from UNC Charlotte's housing studies consistently shows that new build communities absorb quickly, but household satisfaction depends heavily on post-move alignment, not build quality. There's also a sequencing issue people underestimate. Build timelines shift, neighborhoods fill in stages, and what feels like a finished decision is often a 3 to 5 year process playing out after you move in. Early phases feel quiet. Construction noise in the mornings, temporary roads, builder trucks cycling through. Later phases feel crowded. School traffic increases, amenities finally open, your experience changes without you changing anything. Some people love that evolution. They like being early. They like watching something take shape. Others realize they bought into a vision when they really wanted a finished product. Same house, different expectation. And that's the real trade-off. New construction gives you clarity up front, but less flexibility later. Resale gives you more unknowns early, but more freedom to adjust once you're here. The National Association of Realtors relocation research backs this up. Buyers who prioritize flexibility report higher long-term satisfaction, even when the home itself isn't brand new. Neither one is better. They're just different risk profiles. And once you understand that, the final decision becomes much clearer. Not new versus old, but certainty now versus adaptability later, which brings everything full circle. Because the people who end up loving Charlotte long-term aren't the ones who rush toward what looked easiest. They're the ones who chose the right sequence. Charlotte rewards clarity. Guessing is what makes this city feel harder than it needs to be. Every example today ladders up to that. Lifestyle before house, location before square footage, monthly reality before sticker price, flexibility before certainty. When people hesitate, overthink, or rely on outdated advice, they usually end up paying for it later. Not always with money, but with time, stress, and second guessing. Waiting without clarity does not protect you here. It just delays the learning curve. We've watched it happen both ways. People who move intentionally settle in fast. People who guess their way through the process usually circle back months later asking why things feel off. Charlotte is not unforgiving, but it responds better when you show up with a plan. That's why we do what we do. We are the local Charlotte real estate team of choice, and our job is to help you understand the city before you commit to it. If you want real guidance, not pressure, call us, text us, or email us. All our info is in the description whenever you're ready. That's the clean follow-up. If you want to keep learning first, queue up our playlist. It walks through neighborhoods, lifestyle lanes, and decisions that shape how living here actually feels long after closing. I appreciate you spending time with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.